The garbage pit. The marketplace was alive with noise, 1,000 voices shouting, bargaining, and laughing. Alien traders waved their hands, showing off cages filled with strange creatures, slaves, and broken machines. The smell of smoke mixed with rotten food and oil, drifting through the narrow streets among the crowd. One corner stood darker than the rest, the garbage pit. Here the unwanted were thrown, the weak, the failed, the useless. The pit was deep, filled with scraps of metal, spoiled fruit, broken bones, and ash. On this day, the crowd gathered around, their eyes full of cruel amusement. A tiny alien girl was dragged forward, her wrists bound, her body trembling. She was thin, her skin pale under layers of dirt, her hair tangled with filth. The guards lifted her roughly and threw her into the pit like she was nothing. She hit the ground hard, a soft cry escaping her lips. Garbage rained over her, covering her body, stripping away even the little dignity she had. The crowd erupted in laughter, pointing at her shame. "Worthless," one shouted. "She cannot even stand." Another sneered. "Not worth a single coin, only good for the trash." The girl curled into herself, her small hands trying to hide her body. Her eyes filled with tears, but she made no sound. Silence was safer. Silence meant survival. She had been here before, punished, humiliated, treated like waste. But today felt different. Today she felt something inside her breaking. Her heart whispered that maybe this was the end. Maybe it would be better to sink into the filth and vanish. The laughter of the aliens was like knives cutting into her spirit. Every word told her she was nothing, a mistake that should not exist. Yet as the crowd mocked her, a shadow moved at the edge of the pit. A man, taller than the rest, a human. He had come to the marketplace searching for supplies, but his eyes were now locked on the pit, frozen. The noise around him faded. The laughter of the aliens became distant. All he could see was the girl, lying helpless, covered in trash. Something inside him tightened, a deep anger he could not explain. Why was she there? Why was no one helping? He had traveled across worlds. He had seen cruelty before. But this sight struck him harder than any battlefield. The girl's eyes lifted for just a moment, meeting his. In that single glance, he saw pain, shame, and silent pleas for mercy. The human clenched his fists, his heart pounding around him. The aliens noticed his stillness and began to laugh. "Don't look there, human," one shouted. "She is garbage, nothing more." Another added, "Even flies will not touch her. What use is she to you?" The human did not answer. His gaze never left the girl. The crowd grew curious, whispering, mocking, testing his resolve. The girl trembled, whispering with cracked lips, Don't look at me. I am nothing." Her voice was barely audible, broken by fear and shame. She pulled more garbage over herself, as if to disappear. But the human stepped closer, his eyes burning with something strange. Not pity, not disgust, but fury at what he saw. The guards moved to block his way, sneering, "Walk away, human, this is not your concern." Their weapons glinted under the faint light. The crowd cheered, enjoying the scene, waiting to see if the human would dare. But he did not turn back. His voice rang out steady. "She is not garbage," he said, his tone like steel. The crowd roared with laughter at his words. Some spat on the ground, some shouted insults. "Then take her," one alien mocked. "Take the filth if you dare." The human's eyes narrowed, his jaw set. He took another step toward the pit. The girl's eyes widened, her heart beating wildly. Why was he doing this? No one had ever defended her. No one had ever stood against the crowd for her. Her body shook, torn between fear and desperate hope. The human stretched out his hand, steady and firm. For a moment, time froze, the crowd, the laughter, the filth. It all faded. It was only him, standing above, and her, lying in shame. The girl hesitated, her hand trembling in the garbage. If she took it, what would happen? Would this human truly save her? Or was it another cruel trick? Her heart screamed to reach out, but fear chained her still. The crowd shouted louder, demanding a show. The guards lifted their weapons, waiting for the order to strike. The human did not move his hand back, his eyes never wavered. In them, she saw no mockery, no lies, Only fire. Slowly, painfully, the girl lifted her hand. Her fingers brushed his, weak but desperate. The human closed his hand around hers, pulling her upward. And in that moment, the laughter of the crowd turned into angry shouts. The pit was no longer just a place of garbage. It had become the spark of something dangerous. A human had dared to touch what they called worthless. And for the first time in her life, the girl felt the smallest flicker of hope, a fragile light, rising from the deepest shadows. But the question remained, would that light survive the darkness coming next? The marketplace grew restless after the human touched the girl's hand. The laughter had turned sharp, the whispers cruel, the crowd buzzing like angry insects. The guard stepped closer, weapons drawn, their eyes glowing with cold light. But the human did not release her hand. He held it firm, steady, unshaken. The girl's body trembled as she was pulled halfway out of the pit. Her bare skin was still covered in filth, but in his grip she felt something strange. Warmth, safety, a strength she had never known. The crowd jeered, shouting, "Look at the human! He wants garbage!" Others spat in disgust, throwing pebbles and scraps toward the pit. The human ignored them, his eyes fixed only on her. In that gaze, the girl felt stripped of shame, as if his sight reached deeper than her dirt. It was as if he saw not the trash, but the life hidden beneath. Her lips trembled, the words coming unbidden. Why are you looking at me?" Her voice was faint, yet he heard it clearly. He crouched down, his voice low and calm. "Because you are not what they say," he answered. His words shocked her, piercing through years of chains and insults. Her heart shook, torn between wanting to believe and fearing another lie. No one ever says that," she whispered. Her eyes dropped, heavy with tears she could not stop. The human leaned closer, his tone firmer. "I am not no one." The crowd's anger grew hotter, voices rising like a storm. The guards lifted their staffs, ready to strike. "Human, step away," one barked, "or you bleed with her." Still, the human did not move, his hand tightened around hers. The girl gasped, her chest tight, her voice cracking. "Let me go. Please, they will kill you." But the human only shook his head, his eyes hard with resolve. He pulled her fully from the pit, his jacket sliding from his shoulder. Without hesitation, he wrapped it around her trembling form. The thick cloth smelled of leather, smoke, and the long road. To her, it felt like a shield hiding her shame, protecting her from the staring eyes. Her knees buckled, but he steadied her. The crowd howled louder, furious that he dared cover what they had uncovered. One alien spat, "You insult our ways, human." The human straightened, his voice cutting through the noise. "Your ways are cruelty, your ways are weakness," he said. The words were like a slap to the crowd, their faces twisted with rage. The guards rushed forward, metal scraping, ready to strike him down. The girl's heart stopped, panic rising in her chest. "No, please let them take me back, don't fight them," she cried. But his voice thundered back, "I will not let them hurt you again." The first guard swung, but the human was faster. He moved with the strength of someone who had fought before. His hand caught the weapon, twisting it aside, the guard stumbling. The crowd gasped, half in shock, half in excitement. The girl clutched his jacket tighter, her eyes wide. She had seen men beaten for less, crushed for daring to resist. Yet this human fought like he belonged to no chain. The second guard lunged, his blade flashing. The human sidestepped, his fist driving into the alien's chest. The guard fell back, wheezing, the sound echoing over the market. The laughter of moments ago had died, replaced by a tense silence. The crowd no longer mocked. They watched, waiting. The girl pressed closer, to him, her voice shaking. "They won't stop. They will send more. Why won't you leave me?" He glanced at her, his gaze softer now. "Because I can't," he said simply. The words struck her harder than the blows she had suffered. Her throat tightened, her tears hot against her cheeks. She had been called worthless, dirty, cursed. But never had anyone said they couldn't leave her. Her mind screamed it was impossible, but her heart clung to his words. From the edge of the market, new voices rose, more guards marching, their steps heavy, their weapons bright. The merchants shouted, demanding the human's punishment. But behind the noise, the girl heard her own heartbeat fast and wild. The human stepped forward, pulling her behind him, his stance unyielding like a wall between her and the world. She whispered again, "They'll kill you." "Then let them try," he said, his tone steady as stone. The crowd roared in fury, but the girl only stared at him. In his voice, she heard no fear, no weakness, only truth. Her hands shook as she clutched the jacket tighter. For the first time, she wondered if she was worth more than trash. The thought scared her, burned her, but also lit a spark deep inside. Her eyes lifted, her breath caught, the human's gaze never wavered, locked on her as if she mattered, and, in that gaze, something inside her began to stir. Something fragile, something dangerous, hope. The crowd surged, the guards closed in, the air crackled with violence, but the girl no longer felt alone. Not entirely, because the human's hand still held hers, unbroken, unshaken, and she realized this was only the beginning. The air in the marketplace grew heavy, the laughter now sharpened into anger. The crowd pushed closer, their eyes burning with hate and curiosity. They had never seen a human defy them so boldly, never seen anyone protect what they called garbage. The guards circled tighter, their weapons gleaming under the dull light. The girl clung to the human's jacket, her body shivering, her heart racing like a trapped bird. Every muscle in her wanted to collapse, to beg him to run, but his hand around hers kept her standing. The lead guard raised his staff, his voice booming. "You insult our people, you break our law, you will bleed here, human." The crowd cheered, stomping their feet, chanting for blood. The human stood tall, his jaw set, his eyes calm yet fierce. "I don't care about your law," he said, each word cutting through the noise. "She is not garbage. She is not yours." The crowd erupted in rage, voices mixing into a storm. "Kill him," one shouted. "Break him apart," another roared. The girl's hand shook, her voice breaking. "Please don't fight. You'll die because of me." But the human looked at her, his gaze steady. "Then I die knowing I stood for what is right," he answered. The guards moved as one, rushing forward with blades and staffs. The human shoved the girl behind him, his body a shield. The first strike came fast, but he caught the staff, twisting it away. The guard stumbled. Shocked by the human's strength, a second guard slashed, the blade grazing the human's arm. Blood stained his sleeve, but he did not flinch. The girl gasped, her breath caught in her throat. She had seen many beaten, broken, left to rot in the garbage pit. But this man fought with a fire she had never seen before. His fists struck hard, his movements sharp, his will unshaken. Every blow he gave was not for himself but for her, and she felt the weight of it like a storm pressing on her chest. The crowd's cheers turned into snarls, their amusement gone. This was no longer entertainment. It was humiliation. A human, an outsider, was standing against them, and worse, he was winning. The guards grew desperate, too, attacking at once, their blades flashing. The human ducked, drove his fist into one's jaw, kicked the other back. The noise of bones cracking echoed, silencing part of the crowd. The girl crouched low, clutching the jacket tighter. Her mind screamed to run, to hide, to vanish into shadows. But her heart would not let her move. She couldn't tear her eyes away from him. Every drop of blood he spilled was for her. Every step he took was a defiance against the chains that had bound her life. One guard fell, groaning. Another stumbled, spitting. "Blood," the leader growled, his rage blinding. "You dare, human. You think she is worth this," he roared. He swung his staff with deadly force, the air whistling as it cut down. The human caught it, his arm straining, his face grim. With a sharp twist, he snapped the weapon in two. The crowd gasped. Silence, flooding the air for a heartbeat. The broken staff fell to the ground, rolling in the dirt. The girl's eyes widened, disbelief shaking her to the core. The man who stood before her was bleeding, outnumbered, hunted. Yet in that moment, he looked unbreakable. Not a savior from legend, not a warrior from stories, just a man. But a man who refused to kneel. The leader roared again, lunging barehanded. The human met him with a punch that sent him crashing to the ground. The crowd erupted into chaos, some screaming, some running, some calling for more guards. The girl's chest tightened, her hands trembling. Why are you doing this?" she whispered. The human looked back at her, sweat and blood marking his face. "Because you deserve more than this," he said simply. The words struck her harder than the violence. Her body shook with emotion she couldn't name. All her life she had been called worthless, broken, filth. Now one human's defiance made her question it all. The guards groaned on the ground, defeated but not destroyed. The crowd began to move, angry voices calling for vengeance. The human turned, grabbing her hand again. "We can't stay," he said, his voice urgent. The girl stumbled as he pulled her forward, away from the pit, away from the jeering crowd. The market exploded into movement, more guards rushing from the alleys. The people shouted, throwing stones and trash, their fury burning hotter than fire. The girl's heart pounded, her breath ragged, but her hand stayed locked in his, and somehow she did not let go. As they fled into the shadows of the narrow streets, the crowd behind them roared like a beast. The girl looked once over her shoulder. Seeing the garbage pit fade into the distance, her chest tightened with fear, but also with something she had not felt in years. Hope, fragile but alive, burning through the dirt and the shame. The human had fought for her, bled for her, and still held her hand. And deep inside, a question grew louder. If she was really garbage, why did he refuse to let her go? The marketplace was chaos, voices screaming, guards shouting, the sound of boots pounding the ground. The human pulled the girl through the narrow alleys, his grip firm, his pace fast. Her bare feet stumbled on broken stones, her body weak, yet she clung to his hand as if it was the only thing keeping her alive. Behind them, the roar of the crowd grew louder, the hunters chasing, the law demanding blood. The girl's heart thudded in her chest, each beat echoing like a drum of fear. She had never run like this, never felt the rush of danger with someone by her side. The shadows of the tall buildings wrapped around them, broken signs swinging in the night air. Trash littered the ground, the smell of smoke rising from burning torches carried by guards. "Faster," the human whispered, his voice steady though his arm bled from the fight. The girl gasped, her lungs burning. "They'll catch us. They always catch us." But his eyes, sharp and unyielding, turned back to her. "Not tonight," he said. "Not while I breathe." They turned a corner, nearly colliding with two patrolling guards. The human shoved her against the wall, his body blocking her as he struck. A fist met alien jaw, a boot knocked another aside. The sound of metal clattering echoed down the alley. The girl covered her mouth, muffling her cry, her eyes wide with terror. She had seen men beaten by guards before, but never had she seen a man beat them back. It was like watching fire fight against the storm, burning brighter instead of dying. When the guards lay groaning, the human grabbed her hand again, pulling her deeper into the maze of alleys. She stumbled, her knees weak, the jacket he had given, her slipping, but still she held it close. The fabric was warm, carrying his scent, carrying safety. Every step felt impossible, yet she kept moving because he was moving. The torches behind them flickered brighter, the voices shouting closer. "They're everywhere," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "They're afraid," he answered calmly. "That's why they send so many." They reached a broken stairway, leading down into a dark passage below. The market. The human guided her down, the air turning cold, damp, thick with mold. The ground was uneven, the walls wet, rats skittering across their path. The girl clung to his arm, shivering, her voice trembling. "Why do you fight for me? Why not leave me behind?" The human slowed, his gaze meeting hers in the dim glow. "Because you're not trash," he said. "You never were." Her breath caught, her chest heavy with words she could not speak. For so long, she had believed the lies, believed the laughter, believed the shame. But now, with his voice steady and his eyes burning, she felt those chains crack. She looked down at her scarred arms, the dirt clinging to her skin. She wanted to believe him, but fear whispered that he was wrong. "I am broken," she whispered back. "I am nothing." "No," he said, his tone sharp, unshaken. "You are alive, and that is everything." Silence pressed between them, broken only by the sound of distant footsteps. The girl lowered her head, her throat tight, her tears falling. No one had ever said such words to her. No one had ever looked at her as he did. It frightened her, but it also lit something inside her, a spark she thought was gone forever. And though her hands trembled, she nodded faintly, holding tighter. To his jacket, they pressed deeper into the shadows, the passage winding like a serpent. At last they emerged into the ruins of an abandoned outpost. Hidden at the edge of the city, the walls were cracked, vines crawling through broken windows. The human pushed open the door, guiding her inside. The air was cold, but it was silent. No crowd, no guards, no laughter. For the first time, she could breathe without fear pressing her lungs. The girl sank to the ground, her body collapsing under exhaustion. Her bare legs were bruised, her skin marked, her lips dry. She looked up at him, her voice soft. "You could have left me. They would have forgotten me." The human shook his head, kneeling beside her. "I would not forget," he said, "not ever." He tore a strip of cloth from his sleeve, binding the wound on his arm. The girl watched him, her eyes filled with questions she could not ask, her heart twisted with guilt, with wonder, with fear. "Because of me, you bleed," she whispered. He smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Because of you, I fight," he replied. Her chest tightened, a strange warmth spreading through her. No one had ever said such words, no one had ever chosen her over safety. In the silence of the ruined outpost, she pulled his jacket tighter. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Why save me?" The human looked at her, his eyes steady, his voice low. "Because no one else would," he said, "and because you deserve to live." The girl's breath trembled, her heart pounding. In that moment, her world shifted, her shame no longer as heavy. For the first time, she began to wonder if she was more than garbage. Yet outside, the voices still hunted, the footsteps still searched. The danger had not ended, only paused, and in the shadows of the ruined outpost, their fate was only beginning. The ruined outpost was silent, except for the ragged sound of their breathing. Dust floated through the air, settling on the broken walls and shattered tables. The human lowered the girl onto a cracked bench, his jacket still wrapped around her. She sat with her knees pulled close, her arms shaking, her eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. For a moment, the world outside felt distant, the shouts of the hunters muffled by stone. Here in the shadows, it was only her and the man who refused to let her go. The human tore more cloth from his shirt, wrapping it around the wound on his arm. The blood seeped slowly, staining the fabric, but he worked with calm focus. The girl's gaze fixed on him, her chest heavy, her lips trembling. "You bleed," she whispered softly, as if admitting guilt. He looked up, his eyes steady, his voice quiet but strong. "I bleed because I chose to stand," he said. "Not because of you." Her throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes. For so long, every wound she had seen was punishment, every scar proof of weakness. But this man bled because he fought, because he protected, because he cared. She lowered her head, shame mixing with something she could not name. Her hands clutched his jacket tighter, the fabric warm against her cold skin. "You should not waste this on me," she whispered. "I am broken." The human paused, his hand still pressing the cloth to his arm, his gaze fixed on her, firm and unshaken. "You are not broken," he said, his tone sharp like iron. Her heart jolted, her breath catching. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "You do not see." "Look," she whispered, her hands pulling the jacket aside. Her skin was pale and scarred, lines etched deep into her arms and shoulders. Old wounds, burns, and marks of chains told her story without words. She lifted her sleeve higher, showing the bruises still fresh, the welts across her back. Her voice cracked. "This is me. This is what I am." Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. Who would want this? Who would save this? The silence stretched, heavy and sharp. The human leaned closer, his hand brushing lightly against the scar on her arm. His touch was gentle, nothing like the rough hands that had hurt her. He traced the mark slowly, his voice quiet but steady. "These are not proof of weakness," he said. "These are proof you survived." Her breath shuddered, her tears falling freely now. No one had ever spoken of her scars with respect. No one had ever looked at her body without mockery or disgust. Yet his eyes held no revulsion, only fire, only truth. Her hands trembled. As she pulled the jacket tighter again, her voice broke. "I don't understand you." The human gave a faint smile, though his eyes remained hard. "Maybe you don't have to understand," he said. "Maybe you only need to live." The girl's heart ached, torn between despair and the strange warmth his words gave. She wanted to believe him, but fear whispered louder, fear that he would one day see her as the others did. Fear that he would leave once he realized the weight she carried. She lowered her head, whispering, "They will never stop hunting us. You will die for me." The human tightened the cloth on his arm, his jaw set. "Then they will find me standing, not kneeling," he said firmly. Her chest shook, her tears falling onto the dust-covered floor. She had never seen such defiance, never seen such will in anyone. It frightened her, but it also pulled her closer. She reached out without thinking, her hand brushing his wrist. For a moment his hand paused, then turned, closing gently over hers. Her breath caught, the warmth of his touch steady, grounding, real. Outside, faint voices echoed. The hunters still searching. The sound of boots scraped against stone. The glow of torches flickered in the distance. The girl's body tensed, fear flooding back. The human rose, his hand still on hers for one last moment before letting go. "We rest for a short while," he said, "but they will not give up." She nodded weakly, pulling his jacket tighter. Her eyes followed him as he moved to the window, scanning the dark streets beyond. In the silence, her thoughts churned, heavy and sharp. Why had he saved her? Why had he risked his life for someone like her? She touched the scars on her arm, remembering his words. "Proof you survived." The phrase echoed inside her, fighting against the poison of years of insults. For the first time, she dared to think. Perhaps she was more than garbage. Perhaps her life had value, if only because one man believed it. The night deepened, the shadows thick around the ruined outpost. The girl lay against the bench, exhaustion pulling at her body. Her mind drifted between fear and hope, between despair and the spark he had. The human stood watch at the window, his silhouette strong against the faint glow of torches. He was bleeding, hunted, outnumbered, yet he looked unbreakable. The girl closed her eyes, her last thought trembling on her lips. "Maybe I can be more," she whispered into the darkness. But outside, the hunters closed in, their voices rising, their blades ready. And in the silence of the ruined outpost, both human and alien knew the night was far from over. The night was restless, the ruined outpost trembling with every sound from outside. The girl sat close to the wall, her knees drawn to her chest, her eyes fixed on the human's back. He stood by the cracked window, scanning the streets where shadows moved like predators. His arm was still bleeding under the cloth he had tied, but he didn't flinch. He didn't rest. The girl whispered, her voice trembling. "They won't stop. They never stop." The human turned slightly, his gaze steady, his tone hard. "Then we don't stop either." She shivered, her body weak, her scars burning with the memory of every punishment she had suffered. Her voice cracked. "If they catch us, they'll kill you. They'll make me suffer again." He looked at her, his eyes sharp, his voice unshaken. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me first." The words cut through her fear, sharp as a blade, her heart twisted, torn between terror and something warmer, something stronger. The torches outside grew brighter, voices rising, boots striking the broken streets. The hunters were close, their chant echoing through the alleys. "Find the human, find the filth, bring them both back," they shouted. The girl's body shook, panic clawing at her chest. "They surround us," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human reached for her hand, his grip firm, steady, grounding. "Her in the storm? Listen to me, he said, his voice low but fierce. They want you afraid, they want you to give up, but I will not let them win. Her eyes filled with tears, her voice weak. But I am only broken. I cannot fight. I cannot help. He knelt before her, his hand pressing against her scarred arm. You survived everything they did to you, he said. That is strength enough. The girl's breath trembled, his words sinking into the cracks of her soul. She had never thought of survival as strength, never thought her pain meant more than weakness. His voice lit a spark inside her, faint, but real. Outside, the footsteps drew closer, the hunters spreading, their shadows growing longer. The human rose, pulling her up with him, his hand never leaving hers. We move now, he said, or we don't move at all. They slipped out through the back of the outpost into the narrow passages where the stench of garbage lingered. The night air was cold, carrying the sound of shouts from every direction. The girl stumbled, but the human pulled her forward, steadying her. Behind them, the glow of torches spread, hunters sweeping the ruins like wolves. The girl's heart raced, her breath ragged, every step a battle against fear. Why do they want me so badly? She whispered. The human's jaw clenched, his voice hard. Because cruelty needs victims and they chose you. They darted into an alley, only to see 3 hunters waiting, weapons raised. The human shoved her behind him, his body tense, his eyes blazing. The hunters sneered, their voices sharp. Give her to us, human, she belongs to the pit, the girl whimpered, clutching his jacket. But the human stepped forward, his voice cutting like fire. She belongs to no one. The fight erupted in the dark alley, metal clashing against bone. The human moved with fury, every strike fueled by defiance. A blade grazed his side, blood spilling, but he did not falter. He drove his fist into one hunter, sending him crashing to the ground. The girl watched, her chest tight, her heart torn. Every wound he took was for her. Every step he fought was for her. She wanted to scream, to run, but something inside her shifted. The memory of his words burned. In her mind, that is strength enough. Her hands shook as she reached for a broken pipe lying in the dirt. She lifted it, her arms trembling, her breath uneven. When one hunter lunged past the human, his blade aimed for her, she swung the pipe with all the strength left in her. The sound cracked through the alley, the hunter stumbling, his weapon falling. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide in disbelief. She had fought back for the first time in her life. The human glanced at her, a faint fire lighting his eyes. Good, he said, his voice steady even as he struck another down. Her heart shook, his single word filling her with something powerful. The hunters lay broken, groaning on the ground. The human grabbed her hand again, pulling her deeper into the night. The girl's breath was ragged, her body trembling, but her grip on the pipe remained. She felt fear, but also fire. Fear, but also strength. The chase grew louder. More hunters, closing in, the city alive with fury. But the girl no longer felt like garbage, no longer felt like nothing. The human's words echoed in her mind. His hand burned against hers. And with every step through the shadows, she began to believe that maybe she was not broken, that maybe she was worth saving. The night still hunted them, the danger still grew. But for the first time, she did not think only of fear. She thought of fighting, of standing, of living. And in the heart of the rising chase, she whispered into the night, I will not go back. The city burned with voices, hunters shouting, torches blazing, the chase pressing in from every side. The human and the girl ran through the narrow streets, their shadows stretching long against broken walls. Her bare feet bled on the sharp stones, but she did not let go of his hand. For the first time in her life, she did not want to vanish. She wanted to keep running, to keep living. Behind them, the sound of armored boots grew louder, the hunters calling out, the human dies tonight. The girl returns to the pit. Her heart shook, but her grip on the pipe she carried was steady. They reached the ruins at the edge of the city. Stone towers collapsed into rubble. The human pulled her inside, his chest heaving, his wound bleeding darker now. He leaned against the wall, sweat on his brow. his breath rough. The girl's chest tightened, panic rising. "You're hurt. Too much blood. We cannot fight anymore." But he shook his head, his eyes still burning with fire. "If they come, we fight together," he said. The girl's lips trembled, the weight of his words crashing into her. She had always thought of herself as weak, broken, worthless. But now his gaze demanded more. It demanded strength. It demanded courage. Her tears blurred her sight. But she nodded, gripping the pipe tighter. The sound of footsteps grew louder, shadows sliding across the ruined walls. The hunters had found them, their voices sharp with triumph. "They are cornered," one shouted. "End the human. Drag the filth back to her pit." The girl's body shivered, fear clawing at her chest. But when she looked at the human standing tall even in pain, something inside her snapped. She stepped forward, no longer hiding behind him but beside him, her voice cracked but steady. "If you want me, you'll fight both of us." The hunters laughed, their voices cruel, but the human's lips curved into a faint smile. The battle erupted in the ruins, metal clashing, voices screaming. The human fought like a storm, every strike fast and brutal. The girl swung her pipe, clumsy but fierce, her fear swallowed by fire. Together, they moved like two shadows, one shielding, one striking. Every time she stumbled, his hand steadied her. Every time he faltered, her swing bought him breath. The hunters fell one by one, groaning, bleeding, their torches dying on the stone, but the leader remained, tall and scarred, his blade glowing with strange light. He stepped forward, his voice booming. "Human, you will die and she will rot again." The girl froze, her hands shaking, but the human stepped ahead, his voice firm. "She is not yours. She never was, she never will be." The leader roared, swinging his blade with deadly force. The human blocked, the impact shaking the ruins, sparks flying into the night. The girl watched in terror as they clashed again and again. The human's strength was fierce, but his wounds slowed him, blood dripping with every strike. Her chest ached, her throat tight. "He cannot win alone," she whispered. Her hands gripped the pipe tighter, her body moving before her fear could stop it. With a cry that tore her throat, she struck the leader's side. The pipe cracked against his armor, the blow making him stumble. The human seized the moment, driving his fist into the leader's jaw. The blade fell from his hand, crashing onto the stones. The girl gasped, her chest heaving, her arms trembling from the strike. The leader groaned, falling to his knees, the fire in his eyes fading. The ruins grew silent except for the sound of their heavy breaths. The hunters who remained fled into the night, their courage broken. The girl dropped the pipe, her knees buckling, her tears falling freely. The human caught her, pulling her against his chest. She sobbed, her voice trembling. I fought with you." His hand brushed her tangled hair, his voice steady though weak. "You were never garbage," he whispered. "You were always more." Her heart broke and healed all at once, her tears soaking his bloodied shirt. For the first time, she did not feel worthless. For the first time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Not in the pit, not in the chains, but here, beside him. She looked into his eyes, her voice shaking. "You gave me worth," she whispered. "You gave me life." The human's lips curved faintly, his eyes soft. "And you gave me reason." The ruins stood silent now, the night wind carrying away the smoke. The hunters would return. The city would not forget. But the girl no longer feared the future, because she was not alone. She was no longer the creature thrown into the pit, covered in filth. She was someone who had fought, someone who had chosen to live. And beside the human, her destiny was no longer shame, but freedom. In the silence of the broken city, she pressed her forehead to his chest. Her voice trembled but strong. "I will never go back." The human held her close, his arms steady, even in pain. "Then we move forward," he said, his words like fire in the night. And together, in the ruins where despair had once lived, hope was born, fragile but unbreakable, rising with every breath they shared.